Welcome to the Radical Lifestyle Podcast, brought to you by Generation to Generation, where you'll be inspired by the past, equipped for the present, and prepared for the future as we engage in conversations with people from around the world. If you've been inspired by the guests that we've had on the podcast, please like, subscribe, comment, hit notification bells, whatever you can do on the platforms that you're listening on, so that more people have the opportunity of hearing these and engaging in our community. Hello everyone, this is Andrew and Daphne from Generation to Generation, and our guest today is Kynada Boland. For people that don't know who you are, can you just say a bit about where you're from and what you do?
Sure. So my family and I are from America. Our passion is disaster preparedness and response. And we also now currently live in Israel, in Jerusalem. My husband, he volunteers with the Jewish Agency. And so we help connect Christians around the world to projects related to Aliyah and Klita. So at this moment in history with Afghanistan and what's happening now, the two have married very nicely. And so it's a lot about both disaster relief and preparedness for the days to come, and also Aliyah.
And for people that they hear this, they say, you know what, we want to find out more, where could they do that?
We are volunteers with an organization called One Mission, based out of Texas. We have a website, thebollands.org. It's Bolands, Bolands, Bolands.org. And then we also have a preparedness material for home, and we wrote a curriculum to prepare homes and families. It's called Preparedness Peace, and that's on the website at preparednesspeace.com.
Okay, and they will be in the description box. So if you're listening, go there and check those out.
So I think a lot of people are thinking along these lines at the minute, but obviously you don't seem to have just woken up to that now. Can you take us on a bit of a journey about how you became aware of the need of this, how you got connected to it, your own personal journey, and with your husband, if you like, as to how you've come to this moment in time?
Sure. So honestly, it seems in my life, the Lord has always just placed me in situations where there's been a crisis. From the time when I was young, helping people who got their toes cut off during a wakeboarding accident, to things more serious. I was in the Thailand tsunami in 2004 in the Indian Ocean, standing on the shore, watching the wave come in. We were there visiting friends for a holiday, and there just happened to be a tsunami while we were there. And honestly, it was in that time that the Lord... So just a brief snippet, literally we're standing on the edge of the Indian Ocean, watching the tsunami come in to Thailand, a town called Krabi, waiting on our private taxi to arrive. And as the wave approached, I was sitting there taking pictures, and I'm like, I should run. We could see people like boats in the water trying to, we're going to take on the wave. No, we're going to try to beat it. I mean, it was, chaos. And so by the time the wave finally came, it actually broke, because it was this bay that was like a quarter mile deep. The wave broke, the waters rose, we turned around and started running, and our private taxi pulled up right then. And as we drove off, we're like, Phuket Airport, please. And as we drove off, the Lord dropped two scriptures in my heart. He said Isaiah 55 and Isaiah 43. And so I pulled open the Bible right then, and I just started reading them. And honestly, Isaiah 55 it's like this huge revelation of who God is in crisis. The whole scripture outlined our time. We were there for 2 weeks, both before and after the tsunami happened. It totally outlined who God is in crisis. And it has been this revelation of God that has really, it equipped me and was this strong path to my understanding of our role and God's heart in crisis, and it changes everything. So that's really substantial. I think we'll talk more. I would love to talk more about Isaiah 55. But so there's that.
We actually were in Thailand a couple of days after the tsunami hit. We flew in to help a friend of ours set up disaster relief in Bang Tao, Phuket.
Awesome.
So yeah, I don't know if you end up actually leaving, or if you end up hanging around, but our paths almost crossed paths then. Just missed you.
We actually traveled to Chiang Mai and stayed there another week. We asked the Lord, should we go back and help? And he said no, but we could have passed each other in the airport. Who knows? So that happened. And then not too many years later, I got involved with a disaster relief organization based out of Kansas City. And I was their training director for 5 years. And then the earthquake in Haiti happened in 2010. So a team of 4 of us deployed 2 days after the earthquake. We landed in Port-au-Prince and we helped turn a school into a facility that housed disaster medical responders from around the world. And while I was there, I met my husband. He actually was leading a team who came with medical doctors, and they came to our facility and I said, welcome to Quisqueya. And for him, he says it was love at first sight. So I have this phrase when we talk about crisis, I'm like, I love crisis. And he's like, babe, you can't say that. But honestly, I mean, between the ways the Lord, I've seen him move. I mean, even just take Haiti, for example, one crisis on the earth, and seeing the way, first of all, the body comes together. There's unity in the context of crisis like I've never seen any other place. And there's miracles. The Lord reveals himself to people in dreams through other people. Like he chooses to use us. And there's so many testimonies of multiplied food and healings. And it's just like in the context of crisis, who God is it's so powerful and so filled with his heart and his goodness and his redemption and his hope. And so I secretly and passionately love preparing the body to be prepared, not only in the practical sense, but in our hearts. I feel like the bottom line is if we prepare our hearts, we can never prepare for every eventuality that might happen. But it's about our hearts. And if we know who God is in crisis, and we know him as the one who can do anything, who can supply for every need, who can transport people who need to be, I mean, you know, he's still the God of the Bible, and he does amazing miracles, and he loves to reveal himself. And so this is why I'm passionate about preparing each one of us to be ready in our hearts and ready in our homes so that we can serve and so that we can respond and so that God can use us in times of crisis.
So you said you'd like to talk more about Isaiah 65, so go for it, because I'm all ears.
Nice. Okay. So Isaiah 55 starts out and it says, come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters, you who have no money, you who have you have nothing, come buy and eat, buy wine and milk without money and without cost. And I just feel like this highlights the context of disaster. It is an invitation. Every crisis, whether it's personal or national, we have a choice. We either turn to the Lord or we turn away from him. It's the only 2 choices that we have in the context of crisis. And for those who turn to him, it is a huge invitation. Every crisis we face is an invitation to encounter. And so he says, give ear and come to me. Listen that you may live. Listen to me and eat what is good, and you will delight in the richest of fare. If you skip down to verse 6, seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their ways and the unrighteous their thoughts. Let them turn to the Lord and he will have mercy on them, and to our God, for he will freely pardon. And then verses 8 and 9, you know, so many people in the context of crisis are like, where is God? How could this happen? And, you know, the bottom line is we might never understand. We might never have revelation about why something happened. And sometimes we do. But verse 8 says, he says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And so I just feel like he's like, yes, this is who I am. Like you might have no understanding, but it's okay. My ways and my thoughts are so much higher. But he makes this promise, as the rain and snow come down from heaven and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which it was sent. And so I feel like that, in every place of personal, like my dad died when I was 25. And I was like, Lord, it was actually a real crisis in my life. I was like, who am I? I felt safe and strong because I had my dad who told me who I was. And, but in losing him, I was like, God, I need a father. You say in your word that you're my father, and I need you to show up. And I think he loves that when we stand on his word of who he is and who he says he is. And I have seen him so many times in my life in really practical ways show up as a father. I was driving down the highway one time and he's like, pull over and check your tire. So he did. And sure enough, on the back wheel, right on the top, there's this big nail sticking out. I mean, like really practical ways of him revealing himself as a father. And because of that crisis, I have a revelation of God as my father that I never would have had otherwise. And I feel like that is like seed for the sower. But then I can stand here today and I can testify, I know the Lord is my father. And that's bread for the eater. Like every crisis is an invitation to encounter. And then we gain this revelation of who God is that we never would have had before. And now we have it to stand on. We have it to sit in. We have it to rest in. We have it to fight with. And I just think it's so incredible. This is like, so it's like every crisis is pregnant with this invitation to encounter. And so that's how we can go into crisis, like places like Haiti, where it smells of death already, and you can see people trapped in the buildings, and you can still know that God desires to reveal himself, that he is present, that he will reveal himself to every person who turns to him. And even some who don't even know they want him yet or need him yet. He's so faithful and he's so good. And so the end of this verse says, you will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills will burst into song before you, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. And he says, this will be for the Lord's renown, an everlasting sign that will endure forever. And so this is the promise of his revelation, of his, it endures forever. My knowledge of him, because of my personal experiences, it's the best thing that I have. It's everything that I live for. He's so worthy, and hard things happen all the time, but it's full of promise and it's an invitation to encounter. And so this is why I really love crisis. It's easier to say when I see it, when it's not so close to home. And I even hesitated to say it today because of everything that's happening so close to us here and what's happening on the earth. But it's still true. His desire to reveal himself and his faithfulness and his goodness to us.
But if it isn't an invitation to encounter, then what are the birth pains about? I mean, we read about the coming birth pains, or the ones that are here or coming, or wherever you think we are.
Increasing in intensity.
Yeah. So if it's not an invitation to encounter, what are they for? I mean, they don't make any sense.
And maybe a crisis is on the extreme end, but God always encounters us in those moments, like even saying, withdraw to the wilderness places. Those are the uncomfortable places. And, maybe you could say, well, a wilderness and a crisis are slightly different from each other. But the point is, it's in those uncomfortable places, whatever that degree is, that God can work through and you see him do miraculous things. I mean, when we went to Thailand, we went to a community that were hostile towards white people. And around the time of 9/11, this community had said, if white people come here, we'll kill them. And through this crisis, this disaster, the tsunami, we were able to go into that community and to serve them. For the first week, they pretty much kind of just stood off from us and just watched us doing everything. But then there was a child that was running and cut his foot open, stood on a nail. And we had this big DEA officer from America who was with us, and he picked up this child, and we took the child back to the medical center that we'd set up. And while he was cleaning the wound, he felt like God said, wash this child's feet. And so he washed the child's feet, and it was almost like the next day, everything was different. The community were out giving us water and coconut rice and things like that, and they started to engage with us. It was like something just changed in that moment. And so, we can get caught up with being so focused on the disaster side of things that we're almost blinded to what God is doing through the disaster and in people's lives during that time.
So God put this into your heart, your own personal experience, the revelation of the word, your own life, what's happening. Talk to us then about how it has been unfolding to where you are today.
Right. So I met my husband in Haiti, and we met in January and got married in June. And because, when you're familiar with the wrong thing, when the right things comes along, you just go for it. So we got married in June, and I had it all planned out. He was going to join me in our, church and family and organization. It was going to be so great. But the Lord's like, no, I want you to lay it all down. And so I laid all that down, and I moved to Houston with my husband. And that first year, we actually wrote Preparedness Peace, because shortly after Haiti, the Japan earthquake and tsunami happened, and seeing the difference between, a nation, Japan, who's totally prepared, everyone's educated about what to do. Of course, they have strong infrastructure and all these things, but people are really equipped and prepared. And compared with Haiti, who is not, and also having seen on the ground how much the Lord uses people in a context of crisis, we really wanted to help prepare homes and families and small groups and churches to be able to respond. Because, when a crisis happens, especially in your own neighborhood, for the first 72 hours, we're it. You and your neighbors are the people who will be the responders. And so we want to do that really well and be able to love on people in that context. So we wrote Preparedness Peace, and it has trained and equipped a number of churches and individuals and small groups in a number of nations, which is really exciting. I'll show you a picture of it. But it's a small group curriculum, and it has devotionals in it, and also practical homework, actual like a checklist and homework that you have to do each week. And then by the end of the course, you have all of your foundation of preparedness taken care of. And it's just so encouraging. And you have, for the duration of the course, you have accountability, and you have people to do it with and people to pray through things with and great ideas. It's just a lot more fun and a lot more possible to accomplish preparedness when you're doing it with other people. So this is why we wrote Preparedness Peace. And then shortly after that, actually, we got the call to Israel. Israel was nowhere on our radar, but we both knew that we were both called to the nations, and the Lord opened this door, and this was the one for us. And so we moved here in January 2016. And now people are very motivated to prepare right now, which is exciting. So currently our heart is just to help prepare individuals and families. And then we're also networking people together here in the country who also are like-minded and want to pursue relationship and equip their hearts and their homes for the days ahead.
So why did you call it Preparedness Peace? I could guess, but I'd love to hear what you say about it, because I know when you name something, it's really significant and important that you get it right.
Yes. So, we can be motivated by fear, or we can be motivated by love. And the goal of Preparedness Peace is that not only would you be more prepared, but that we would walk in peace, because there's a lot of things that could cause fear. But as we face them head on and talk to the Lord about them, that's a key goal of Preparedness Peace, is to really cultivate that conversation with the Lord, because he knows exactly what we need to prepare for. He knows if you need wheat or if you need water, or if you should store a bunch of, you know what I mean? Like, he knows what the needs are ahead. And so as we cultivate that conversation with him, then he will lead us. And that always leads to peace. And so, and also when you have made plans and you do have food, or you have whatever that thing is that you know that you need, it really does bring peace.
Yeah. And we have a small group, and we met yesterday, and it was really interesting because afterwards and we were talking about this issue, and some of the comments afterwards were, it was so great to be able to talk about it without fear. And I think often when people think of this, fear is attached to it. We're preparing because we're afraid, and if you're not careful, you can get caught up in the fear of preparing instead of the peace of preparing. How would you define the difference between those two? How do people keep the line of preparing in peace as opposed to being then caught up with the fear?
Right. Well, I would say that's a really common problem. And I would say it's a process, just like our walk with the Lord. Not everyone arrives at the same place on the same time. But I think it has to do with what we take in. If we're watching the media, if we're listening to things that are constantly provoking fear, then obviously you're going to land on fear, more fear. I don't do the news. I just can't, like, for my own heart, for my husband will tell me what I need to know. But really, my source is the word, and I feel like the Lord can tell me what I need to know. And this is just my own personal thing. This is like how me and God do it. And, but it is very common actually, as people walk through the course together with other people, as you start thinking about what you might need and how steps you need to take, like, there is this little spike of fear, because people kind of either shut the door totally and just don't worry about it. And so naturally, when they start to think about, oh, there actually might be an earthquake in our region, and what would I do about that? It is a natural response to have fear. There's a lot of unknowns. And so that's why it's just so important to come back to what the Lord says, who he is, who I am. And, I don't know how long each one of us will live or how we will die. But what I do know is he's worthy and he's faithful, and we can trust him, and he will lead us if we're asking him. And so I think that it's so much on what we focus on and what we stand on and process with him along the way.
Yeah, I guess if you didn't have an element of fear, not an unhealthy amount, but a healthy fear or respect of the power of a disaster, etc., then you may not have the motivation to even do anything if you're so blasé about them. It's like, well,
Right.
oh, don't need to prepare, nothing's going to hit me or whatever. There's a healthy element of fear that you maybe should have towards these things to motivate you to move forward, but not to the point where it's just completely overwhelming. More like a respect for the power of Mother Nature. I think that in the last few years, more and more people are aware of this situation now. The aware of the need to prepare for elements of viruses now, which apparently can shut down the entire world, and you see these earthquakes and stuff like that. But more and more people are aware of it. Maybe before the last couple of years, you would have had pockets of people, but this feels like so many people are now aware of this that this could really be a very helpful tool for a lot of people right now. But there are so many elements. When people think of disasters, you can think of the earthquakes, the tsunamis, you can think of the viruses that spread around the world. Now we're even talking about war, even people throwing out the words nuclear war, World War III. There are so many elements. So with your preparedness piece, how does it navigate all these different kinds of elements?
So we work on the foundation of preparedness, because we have this rule of threes in the disaster world. You can survive 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So these are staple things. If you have a major power outage in a city that affects your water pumps, then you have a water issue. So I'm not even in preparedness piece specifically. We're not talking about nuclear war or anything major. We're just talking about the foundations, because once you get the foundations in place, you have a source for water, you have a way to filter it, you have water stored in your home. I just want to say right now, if you do not have extra water in your home, bottles of water stored, you can stash them in your bathroom closet. You can be creative under the bed. Everybody needs water stored. My husband and I have this constant conversation about, I'm like, babe, we need more water. He's like, but 3 days you can survive without water. That's it. Clean, pure water. So it's really important. So anyways, water, definitely. So we're just talking about the foundations. How do you do without lights? Let's just take an electric outage for a few days. If you've never spent one night or even 24 hours in your home without electricity, this is a great exercise, even as a family. It's a super fun activity. It's like camping in your own home, but it highlights how much you rely on electricity. And it highlights right away, even for a basic electric outage, these are the things that we need to address. And so this is the type of stuff that we're talking about in Preparedness Peace, because once you get all the foundations in place, then you can build on that. Then if the Lord says, I actually want you to prepare for your entire building, well, then all you have to do is get a little more stuff. You already have the foundations in place. So that's what Preparedness Peace helps cover.
Yeah, and that's really good. I think that when people get so much information thrown at them, they become so overwhelmed with the task ahead. But like you said, depending on where you are, for example, if you're in Israel, one of those additional things may be a bomb shelter. You don't have to worry about that. You've got bomb shelters all over the place. So, once you've got those foundations in, you can then start looking at the details of where you are and what you might need to add to it.
Yeah, and what we have people listening, say, Iran, in Malaysia, in the US, but what you're talking about is absolutely foundational across cultures, across nations. It provides a foundation that is for anybody, really. And that's what I really, really like about it. So if people wanted to know more about the Preparedness Peace course, support, everything you offer, how can they do that?
We should go to the website at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm waiting here.
Right, but something really exciting. So obviously disasters require paper, pencil. I mean, if the internet is down because the power is out, you need information. So I've been like really like old fashioned and thinking that everyone needs the book. But just today, because of this, my husband actually uploaded the PDF and the videos to our website so that anybody around the world you could buy the download. I know we're like snail people here, but anyways, now on the website, and people could download it, both the videos and the materials, so they could do it on their own. But seriously, it's called a self-study so that you can do it alone. But really, the most effective way to accomplish preparedness is to get other people to do it with you, so that you have, it's more fun. You have accountability and you actually get it done. Because like you're saying, so many people are like, oh, I should totally get prepared. But everyone's lives are busy, and it really does take time and it takes focus. And if you have other people doing it with you, there's a much better chance that you'll actually accomplish it.
Yeah. And, other people have slightly different experiences from you. And so they will think of things that you won't naturally think of as well, which is what happened with us yesterday or the day before when we had our small group and we were talking about this. Like someone would say something, you're like, oh, I'd never actually even thought about that element of this. That's really good. I should take more time to really think through that. So yeah, I recommend doing this kind of thing with a group. So you get to hear from other people's experiences, perspectives on things. You can say something.
No, but I can.
Oh, I thought you were about to say something.
I can just say that this is really, really good. It's not, you get the practical, you get the spiritual. It's a holistic preparedness as far as I can see. And I just think it's amazing. But also, I hear it's driven by your passion. And that is really what makes the fire behind it. Well, the fire is God. But I know when you've got a passion for something, you're focused, it's going to happen, and you keep it going. And we all need that passion. So thank you for sharing it with us.
And preparing families, homes, we love that. Being generation to generation. It's not just some big organization out there. It's preparing your average person living at home, their families, the kids can engage in it. So we love that about this as well. Kynada, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I really encourage people, again, if you're listening, go check out the link. Invest in this, in educating yourself, preparing yourself, your family,
the churches.
Your churches. It's valuable, it's needed. We can see the world that we're living in right now is chaotic. And it can be really overwhelming to figure out how you even survive in this kind of world. It can mess with you emotionally, mentally. So really take the time to invest in yourself and your family in doing this so that you can be prepared in peace and be more prepared for the things which are going to come. Because sadly, the world we live in right now is only going to get worse before it gets better.
And the good news is Jesus warned us these things are going to happen.
He's still on the throne.
And I would say I had a look around the website and I clicked in some of the materials and you can see them and they are really clear, really simple, not complicated, very easy to use. So
my kind of material.
And mine, yeah.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Kynada.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Remember, if it inspired you, share it with others so we can see more people engaged in this community.